Last month I covered the year 1986, delving into all the flavours that year had us to offer cinematically. I'm going to continue this trend going forward, and this month look at 1985. Were you there? Were you even born? Are you curious about what life at the theatres was like in that year as a whole back then? First, let's look at the numbers. Here is the top grossing films in America that year. I was going to show the worldwide numbers, but the numbers website is in the middle of a revamp, so they're unavailable. Instead, I had to turn to Box Office Mojo, and their idea of worldwide numbers for that year is a joke. Just to illustrate, in their wisdom, they seem to think that Back to the Future only took 10 million outside of North America. I don't think so. Trust me, it did way better than that, making a box office global total that was just shy of 400 million. Back to the Future is then the obvious film to point the finger at, but most people have seen it, and I'm not going to waste too much time on that one, because in likelihood, you know all about it. You might also know about the numbers 2 and 3 on that list. Sylvester Stallone had the biggest year of his career with the double punch of Rambo First Blood Part 2 and then Rocky 4. Rocky 4 actually lands in the second place with 300.5 million global tally, and Rambo 2 was in third with a very, very close 300.4 million. First Blood Part 2 is where Rambo took the fight back to the jungle, and this series very much became about the body toll and the explosions. Rocky, on the other hand, went all music montage honours, and Stallone got political with his antagonist this time round in the face of Ivan Drago from Russia. As mentioned, both of these films hit huge at the box office, and Stallone got himself down to a stupidly low density of body fat in his training. It's also worth mentioning that Arnold wasn't near Stallone's box office numbers yet, but he had him in his sights and delivered us Commando, one of Arnold's earlier action films that delivers quips, action, and a stupidly high body count. But Stallone was still the reigning king. So what else was born this year? Well, we saw the birth of the Coen brothers' career with Blood Simple. A largely overlooked film at the time, this dark noir comedy evolved into a cult favourite in the 90s onwards. Honestly though, I think it's merely decent. Critics in the 90s had a habit of over-ranking cult movies. But here it is, and it is still worth checking out. The Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire saw the birth of the Brat Pack. So many young faces were appearing in so many of each other's films, someone just had to write about it and put a stamp on that name. Some people managed to evolve beyond such labelling, others were trapped and hounded by it at the time, as well as into their careers afterwards. The faces in these two films are largely the names associated with the term. Like the previous year, John Hughes was working hard on 2 movies. Along with The Breakfast Club, he also wrote and directed Weird Science, a comedy about 2 loser kids who decide to create their own woman, and get more than what they bargained for. It's far more restrained in terms of being a sex comedy, but swings from the fences in terms of imagination. It also features a hilarious turn from Bill Paxton as the bully older brother. If you haven't seen my previous video on Paxton, please go check it out. Speaking of sex comedies, there was also the likes of Porky's 3 and the ever-continuing Police Academy series, and whilst these were things of the time, they haven't stood the test of time. Instead, let's get a little more genre-specific and see what else was out there that coloured the year. In terms of comedy, there is no better highlight than Clue, an adaptation of the board game, and that's Cluedo in the UK. 6 guests are invited to a dinner party at a remote mansion in 1950s America. Each is given a pseudonym to use, see the names on the board, and after dessert is barely served, there is blackmail, deceit, and murder afoot. The guests and the very wordy butler, played by a superb Tim Curry, more on him later, have to figure out who, where, and what with the crimes were committed. Written by Jonathan Lynn from Yes Prime Minister fame, this is a very smart script that flies through the mouths of all of the superb actors. Repeat viewings are a must if you want to catch all of the jokes. Horror always has a good year, and both small and international efforts were paying off this year. Charles Band brought us the low-budget start to one of his many franchises in the form of Ghoulies. If you thought Critters was a low-budget attempt to cash in on Gremlins, then Ghoulies takes the cake by being even more low-budget and infinitely naffer. It features a cast of unknowns going up against, not Eric Roberts? If you read up on the making of it, it was actually made about the same times as Gremlins, it just happened to be released later. And Empire Pictures has its following, and it's thanks to films like this one. Larry Cohen, a budget belt size up from Charles Band, brought us the cult film The Stuff. You just can't get enough of it in this film. Cohen made this black comedy horror that combines consumerism and addiction together to form commentary on us, the society, turning us into mindless drones. And it actually does it pretty well. If anything, this stuff is more relevant now than it ever has been. Check it out. Stepping up a rung, and speaking of mindless zombies, they were very much back in fashion in the form of George A. Romero's third part of his Dead trilogy, Day of the Dead, easily the goriest of the lot with some truly nerve-shredding practical effects work. It would be a couple of decades before Romero returned to this playground. Dan O'Bannon also comes round with the much funnier but just as disgustingly impressive in the FX department, Return of the Living Dead. This was to be a franchise starter and offered a much more darkly humorous look at the zombie world. Stuart Gordon also chimed in with Re-Animator. A couple of med students start to play God and find that they have invented the serum that can bring things back to life, but also that they can combine things together to bring all sorts of new versions of life to reality. Mad scientists run amok for sure, but the visuals are great and again, another franchise starter. The Italians didn't so much do mindless drones or reanimated corpses as they did people infected with pure evil in the wake of Demons. Demons, yes, another franchise starter here, sees a group of poorly dubbed patrons in a cinema get locked in as a demon infection breaks loose, with only one scratch and you are doomed to turn into one of the toothy, green foam drooling beasts from hell, intent on only hunting down and clawing people to shreds, and they in turn will join you. Again, some interesting effects and makeup here, and fairly tense standoff as numbers dwindle as people run and hide for their lives. Also bolstered by a rock-heavy soundtrack and an undeniable decent music score from Claudio Simonetti. Silver Bullet is worth mentioning purely for the fact that we always seem to have a Stephen King adaptation, and here it is. This is his werewolf story. Speaking of classic creatures, we also have vampires. Fright Night is a vampire tale with a teenage boy suspecting that his neighbor is a vampire. It also spawned a sequel and a remake and a sequel to the remake. Not a great year for the actual existing franchises though. Freddy Krueger returned on a tonally off-balance second film in Freddy's Revenge, and Jason didn't even show up for his sequel in Friday the 13th Part 5 A New Beginning. Fantasy was still going strong and had its standouts in the form of Ladyhawke featuring Rutger Hauer and Michelle Pfeiffer as cursed lovers. He spends the day as a man and nights as a wolf. She is forced to spend her days as a hawk and nights as a woman, and never the twain shall meet in person. And this is a kids film, so no, there'll be no birds getting it doggy style. Return to Oz offered a luscious and very dark look at the merry old land now in decay as Dorothy returns and meets up with new friends on a new adventure. The tone of this one is certain to give some children nightmares as the land is littered with potential death, violence, monsters and headless princesses, and yet at the same time the visual design and music score make for a rather beautiful experience as well. Ridley Scott took a poke at the fairy tale with Legend, hands down one of the best looking films ever shot, featuring a forgettable performance from the upcoming leading man Tom Cruise, but does feature many other very notable performances from supporting players like Alice Playton, Mia Sara, and particularly, here he is again, Mr. Tim Curry as the Lord of Darkness. Rob Bottin's effects work are second to none in this film. The story is wafer thin, but the depth of some of the scenes and scenery are magical. There is also now 3 official versions to pick from, the US, International and Director's Cut, and the US and International versions have vastly different scores from Jerry Goldsmith and Tangerine Dream. Turning now to science fiction, Cocoon saw a bunch of oldies act like teenagers in a sweet science fiction yarn from Ron Howard. Aliens are friendly in this one, and Steve Guttenberg was once a star. He also had the second Police Academy film out this year. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome presented a disjointed third film in the franchise. Some of it represented some of the best of the post-apocalypse and the lengths that humankind goes to create society, but also the forms of entertainment that they invent. It is also 1/3 hanging out with the Lost Boys. There were no Lost Boys in Joe Dante's Explorers though, just boys in space as 3 friends devise a way to get out there and, well, explore. Say hello to the big screen Ethan Hawke and River Phoenix, and even more special effects work from Rob Bottin. Terry Gilliam stuck it to the adult world and went all Kafka in 1984 with us with Brazil. Jonathan Pryce battles in his head and dreams of a better life only for the system to come crashing down upon him in this perversely dark satire. So all round for the year are a stack full of hits that kicked off certain franchises and also existing franchises having career highs and lows. I've mentioned before I also work on the Film Utopia podcast with 2 other gentlemen, and we covered 1985 last year on the podcast. Go check out that show if you want to hear a nice lengthy discussion as we cover the release schedule from January to December and pick out the films that are winners for us. As always, looking at the box office results, you see that so many well-known films today didn't make a dent at the box office, instead were a hit on the video market, which was thriving at the time. This was also about the time that it became commonplace to buy video cassette tapes for the home instead of just renting them. Back then, there was at least a 6-month window between the rental window period and then the time that retail shops could stock tapes for full purchase. All my times were different back then. It's for the fact that we could rent and buy these films where life is re-injected into a lot of films, making them home sales hits or cult hits among fans. Tim Curry probably had the worst Christmas ever with Clue and Legend. Clue released in America on December the 13th and Legend released in the UK on the exact same day. Both bombed. Thank God them both have been resurrected and have strong followings. A quick note on last week, I did a video on the career of Bill Paxton, which a few people have watched, but hopefully more will. If you haven't seen it, do go check it out. But what has been popular is the 3-minute short I did on the most quotable lines that Bill Paxton has given us. It's in the short category, go check it out, it is very entertaining, and the response has been phenomenally positive. And I just want to say to all those people that liked and supported that, thank you very much, and Bill Paxton, we are still remembering you. Next week, I'll be looking at the second quarter of the year and picking out the films I'm potentially excited to see. Next month, I will come back to cover another year in cinema. It just keeps on ticking here. Thanks for watching. Job done. Good boy.
Oh, good boy. Yes, he's a good boy.